performers abroad, but I just want to say thank you all for attending, and thank you all to our artists who are performing, and collaborators and directors. Thank you so much, and welcome to our moderated discussion. Great, so I wanted to sort of start with one, just having an amazing, disparate, but really kind of engaging grouping of all three of your performances together. And obviously, there's so many political themes going on in all of your works. And to sort of talk about that, and sort of my first question being, do you guys, when you start in sort of early stages of a process, are you responding to political actions or ideas with a goal in mind to create and affect change, or are you looking to perform a response of your own feelings and experiences? Are these guys linked up? Hey?
Should I speak?
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah.
We can hear you a little bit.
You can hear you a little bit. I think they can't hear you at the moment.
They can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can also just tell them the question again.
Yeah.
Really close. Can
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yes.
So the question was, I'm going to try and summarize. It was about all of the works have political themes in common, and how do you start making work? Do you start with like a response to something political that's happening, or?
Yeah, or is it a with the aim of impacting that political change?
Or is it with the aim of impacting the political change? Is it a response or a like stimulus?
Stimulus, yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys?
Yeah.
If you guys want to start.
Yeah, oh man, okay. Hi everyone, this is my co-creator, Kristina Goldstein. She's a star. So I started this piece, I was 20 years old, and this is not on. I just love sound looking things in my hands.
You have to turn it on.
This is what we do. All right. So you've seen the process. But I made the piece, I started making the piece as a college assignment when I was 20 years old. Because I have literally never seen my body in that way on stage. I think every time I see disability on stage, it was always in some sort of either storytelling or stand-up or theater piece which disability was defined. And I had done stand-up and I was making a lot of jokes about my body, and I realized that I just wanted to see what happens if I put my body in space uncontextual or decontextualized, because I was told I was trying to hide it and trying to hide it and trying to hide it through means of performance and all of this performing gymnastics that I think that actors who are of diverse experiences do. We try to in a room, make sure that everybody is cool with what we're putting down, and we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable about our identity. And I saw that with other performers of other diverse identities, and I felt myself doing it too. But really, the things that we bring, rather than defining them, are the most inherently engaging. So I just literally wanted to see what would happen if I didn't define a thing for the abled, if I made a piece for me. And then Holly came along and was like, "What are you doing? What are you saying?"
Well, yeah, and I think that specifically in the context of the political ramifications of this piece is that Jessy's body is never not political, because it's never going to be what you usually see on stage, and that automatically is going to start a conversation. And the exciting thing about doing theater that revolves around disability is that you have a bunch of bodies in a room, and it's a different sort of empathy that you have with the audience when you're physically in a room watching someone experience something. The stress of we've done this show so many times, and I was in the booth freaking out, being she's gonna fall, there's so much water, stress every time, and that physical stress is something that you can only really have when you're in the room experiencing it. So it becomes a different sort of politic rather than this intellectual engagement with a subject matter that's far away. Suddenly you are forced to confront it within your own body and how you relate to it.
Thank you. How about New Saloon?
Hi, we're at New Saloon. I'm Milo. This is Morgan, who's the director. This is Maddie, who you saw perform. The play started. This play, cute actress. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Yeah, hot mic. The play started. I was kind of thinking about all the ways I'm apathetic or failed to be more political. I was kind of trying to interrogate my own inability to, like, I get action items from Move On every day. I do none of them, you know, or I didn't vote in the local Brooklyn election. I know it's horrible, but a lot of people didn't. So many people. I didn't.
Your two collaborators did.
They're good. So, not to glamorize those things or to provide comfort for people who also are doing bad, but just as hopefully to heal, as a galvanizing and healing.
Well, what I think is interesting too is that Milo started writing this play before Donald Trump was elected and before we all were like marching every couple weeks, which is I think that speaks to you were like tuned in. You're not like an apathetic millennial necessarily.
But the work, I think as a work, it's not like kind of polemic or didactic or agitprop about, it's not, you know, I feel some work is hypocritical. You know, it's not like, it's less about saying do this in response to your question, you know, do this or don't do that, as much as it is a kind of introspective honesty.
Interrogation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah. I think also because in the text, Milo's really trying to investigate his own apathy, why he doesn't do things, and the things that he does want. So in the ways to stage it, was trying to look at, or we were trying to look at the things that influence us or matter to us in this emotional way, like romance or like rom-coms, or it's like some like stupid things that are all too powerful in the way that we understand ourselves in the world. And so I think trying to like talk about these important political issues, spoofing or sort of like looking at the structures of those kind of genres, or like celebrity, like these two pop songs basically. That's like a way to, for me, I think, to be political. It's like look at what is actually making an impact on us, and how.
Right. Guys, under Sunair?
Yeah.
Kathryn,
Well, it was really, it's,
oh,
I hear you all.
Yes, we hear you.
okay. Go on, Onur, because it's really hard to understand everything you were saying because you're American, you're, you know.
I was
And
no, I understand. We're all Americans. Yes, that's true.
But it's so hard, you know. So yeah, go on, Onur, please.
I mean, it was a little bit difficult for us to see the pieces through the camera, through Skype. I can't really, I mean, personally, I can answer from my side. I mean, I think I have a different conception of politics here. And in the work, I mean, it feels to me, I mean, this work is like Kathryn's work or Suhair's work somehow, and I'm like participating to help them somehow. But I mean, in my work, I mean, when I'm doing work here, I'm always trying to avoid politics. I mean, I'm trying to stay away from it because it's like the term politics are so much in life here. So like somehow outside of the political realm, what you can experience, what you can find. I mean, that's how I work here, I feel like. I mean, it's a different orientation maybe than how you are approaching what you are doing as you are describing. But I don't think, I mean, I hate even the word politics, politicals, to start with.
Suhair, do you have a response as well?
No, I have a different answer. You know, ever since the revolution started, I was always thinking in Syria, I was thinking how we can talk about what's going on, and it's really hard, really, really hard. So for me, it's even love. Love, it's politics. Everything is politics in Syria. Anything you do, it's involved with politics, because it's always your beloved one or people you really like. They're not there anymore, or you're losing them all over the years. And there's a reason why we're losing them. It's not just because of the war or whatever. It's about also the regime. So for me, I can't just watch and say that, even if we want to talk about, two people, fell in love with each other, it's also, there's a risk, because you never know if you can live with this person because of the situation. So for me, it was really hard from the very beginning when we started, me and Kathryn and Hatem, writing the script. It was really, really hard, and it was real also, because Hatem and I, we were in love, and we had difficulties, so many difficulties, because I left and I couldn't go back to Turkey, and he couldn't leave Turkey, and it's about the paperwork, and it's always, it's like people are afraid from refugees, Syrian refugees. So I cannot be away from politics. I can't. It's even if I don't want to get involved with this, even if I don't want to. But it's the world. It's like this. It's not only, it's not us. So it was like we wanted to share this piece with everybody, talking about love, and how it's really hard to really stay with your partner after what happened, That's it.
And I think that says a lot about kind of what we saw across everybody's performances, is that you're dealing with very large issues about sort of international politics, personal politics, a feeling of dread or anxiety around being political, but you're all finding a very personal way to address that, and you guys especially, you sort of rolled with the punches in a way of figuring out how to put something together that became very personal and became about your guys' relationships. So I wanted to ask you guys sort of how do you find your process leading you to deciding upon form? And Morgan, you guys mentioned that it was just sort of throwing out ideas of how to sort of recontextualize and playing with sort of pop songs and celebrities in a way to address large political issues.
Oh, man.
Sounds like you're throwing that one out.
I know.
It's free for all.
I think in process, the form is how do you make a show that is impossible for your performer to do? And that's what I do as what I have done as a creator. And the form can change in any way, and I'm actually really interested in exploring what that form is that expands on the impossibility of the task that I'm asking myself to do. But then there are also so many inspirations. I am hugely inspired by the Coney Island sideshow movement, because that's the only time that disabled bodies have ever been able to take agency over, historically, over their own bodies. Because when the sideshow was happening, it was either you were working in the sideshow or you were institutionalized. So that form, and I do a lot in the burlesque scene, and so that was inspiring to make a variety-esque show, minutia, episodic kind of thing.
Yeah, and we pulled from a lot of stereotypes that get projected onto people with disabilities, the infantilization that was always a thing. We kind of played with that for this dollhousey feeling, and I think that a lot of form also emerged from what was happening in your life as we first made it.
Yeah.
And I hope I can say this, your own path with your own sexuality, and how that was evolving while we were making this piece really informed what was happening on stage. And this is the third iteration of it, and the first time it was a lot of feelings, and then the second time it was a lot of fun and joy, because we were able to just let it rip and let it exist, and now we're kind of questioning like what containers can this work in, and how do these forms of like clowning and burlesque and game shows and potentially like durational performance, like how do they all like fit together to really upset people's assumptions about people with disabilities and make people uncomfortable and turned on at the same time.
Thinking about form, I'm thinking of something that you said about like, you feel on edge watching Jessy like almost slip and fall, and you don't experience that if you're not in the room. And I think like Milo wrote this as a play. Milo wrote Cute Activist as a play, not as like an essay or any other form of sharing his ideas. And I think I keep on thinking about this thing that Chris Tyler, who many of us in this room know, said after the election, where he was like, the alt-right has become powerful online. Like they exist in these dark internet spaces. And something revolutionary that we can all do and that we can like cling to is that we have these rooms that we can be in, and we can like share ideas in these rooms. And like granted, there's like a danger that we're navel gazing because we're all, like artist people in New York City in a very liberal community, but there is power in sharing ideas in this way. And I think like there's a scene that you didn't see tonight in Cute Activist that Milo wrote that is just like a bunch of activists in a room like saying ideas, and it feels sort of constructive in a way to just like put yourself in a space where you can have those ideas and say those ideas out loud, or hear some other people saying those ideas out loud, and then move out into the real world after it's done. And when you are in the room with people confronted with that so close, with like breathing humans, it feels somehow more urgent, and like you can then go out and you feel like fortified and able to then be not just an artist, but like a human who is making change, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's very beautiful. The play, this is, Morgan said something very similar to this earlier, but the play is structured kind of like an epic fantasy or like a romantic comedy, borrows structural and thematic tropes from those two rich genres, which all kind of like relieve the viewer of having to take action afterwards. They're like, if these two characters kiss, the town will be saved, or this other character has a prophecy, they're gonna go on this quest to kind of like save everything. There are these really stupid tropes that I was really addicted to growing up, reading Harry Potter and things. So it borrows from a lot of pop culture, and then there's this tension between the good versus evil that's really popular in that kind of form, and the really messy moral landscape we find ourselves in living in Trump's America.
Yeah, one fun thing about Milo's play is that he writes these stage directions that are impossible. Like a mystical bluebird comes from the sky and sings in 1,000 silvery voices. And then Dipali Gupta, our composer, and John Gasper, our sound designer somewhere here, have to interpret that and figure out what's the important part about it, and what's possible in a space, in a theater space. And one thing I was gonna say that I was thinking about because of the Sisters Sylvester piece is we are all inundated with information all the time. We're constantly multitasking and doing many things. And so there's something maybe too simplistic about theater right now in terms of our attention spans. And so one thing that I think about taking all of these influences and the text from Milo is like trying to have many things happen at the same time to kind of like meet to where our audience intake like level is at. I don't think what we showed you just now necessarily does that, but that's what we strive to do. This piece definitely, I instantly love this piece because there's so much going on, And it's like if you're not listening to one person or watching you physically in the space, you're listening to someone across the world. Like there's just so much, it inundates you, and you don't have space really to like drift away from it. And I feel like as a company, that's kind of one thing that we are interested in, is like meeting the sensorial like overload that we are all now accustomed to.
You want to say something about form?
No,
Maybe you should say something about form.
I think the form of the full-length piece is very different than the way we showed it to you right now, because it's one of the challenges of showing 15 minutes was any 15 minutes excerpted from this piece is just 15 minutes of us three on Skype. Like it's just 15 minutes of us talking on Skype, but the piece very, very slowly changes between these different registers and these different kind of ways of being. And I think one of the, there's a lot going on in terms of the visuals. I mean, we also talked about it in terms of Suhair and Hatem now on Noor being cinematographers as well as being performers. So learning to kind of manipulate their computers or their webcams to create a cinematography, so that when one is talking, maybe the other's going to the kitchen and making some mate, you like move around the house with them, but the piece itself is actually quite slow. I mean, you spend a lot of time, it's day usually as well outside when we do it in Europe, so you spend a lot of time kind of sitting on the windowsill with Suhair smoking a cigarette, just kind of looking at Paris in the background, or with Hatem in the kitchen making his mate, waiting for the mate to boil. So the form, I think, we wanted to capture this sense of the stuckness, I guess, like being in a room and just being in that room. And the things, and also the way that we're on Skype all the time, and you can't see your lover or your mother or whoever, so you just leave Skype on, and you make your tea and you smoke your cigarette and you do your thing, but Skype's just on all the time as you live your life.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I mean, I was doing it for the first time. I mean, since Hatem's situation is like not well at the moment. And this last week we were rehearsing this piece this way, and I was in the room and trying to act on camera. And I'm making theater, and for the first time in my life, I hated going to the rehearsals. I mean, going to a room with no one and just having a camera and trying to make a piece with it. It was really awful. I mean, it's like I realized why I'm making theater rather than other art forms maybe. But I mean, it felt really difficult to make work in the room this way. I mean, I just wanted to say this. It's like, as an actor experiencing for the first time this version, it's really difficult. I mean, it's not worth doing this theater. It felt to me, but it's very personal, I know too. So, I mean, form is difficult for this piece, I can say.
Great. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We won't be able to do questions. But I want to thank everyone again for coming. I'll let you know that across the hall in the lobby, through the lobby, there's a new dramaturgies conversation happening over there, and I encourage you all to check it out. We start in just a few minutes. Thank you very much to all our artists, collaborators,